Namaskar and welcome to Sansad TV. You are watching History Behind Headlines. I'm your host Rajiv Singh. The United States and Israel carried out coordinated strikes on Iran on the 28th of February, the latest escalation in a confrontation that stretches back more than 7 decades. Once again, the world is watching West Asia with deep concern. The crisis has entered a new and uncertain phase with the declared death of Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. His passing could reshape political calculations inside Iran and across the region. Tensions between Washington and Tehran continue to keep the international community on edge. This is not a single crisis, one war, or one nuclear dispute. It is a layered confrontation, historical, ideological, strategic, and deeply emotional. No analysis of US-Iran tensions is complete without considering Israel's security calculus. Israel views Iran's missile development and potential nuclear capability as existential threats. American military and diplomatic support for Israel intersects directly with Iran policy. On Saturday, 28th of February, US and Israel launched an attack on Iran. The Iranian news agencies reported that explosions were heard in the cities of Isfahan, Qom, Karaj, Kermanshah, as well as in the capital Tehran. After the attack, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked the American president for his leadership. Iran followed with a swift counter-attack on Israel and US bases in the region. Earlier, the US President Donald Trump confirmed a major combat operation in the region.
The United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people.
The crisis in West Asia took a dramatic turn the next day. On Sunday, the 1st of March, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was declared to have been assassinated in the joint United States-Israeli action. Tehran vowed retaliation, and it came swiftly. Iran launched widespread strikes across the region. Targets included Israel, United States military bases, and key energy infrastructure in several Gulf countries. Facilities in Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates have been hit. Even the global commercial hub of Dubai has come under attack. At sea, tensions are also rising. Iran has moved to disrupt shipping through the strategic Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical oil transit routes. Any prolonged disruption here could send shockwaves through global energy markets. Countries heavily dependent on Gulf crude, including India, will be watching developments very closely. The situation remains extremely volatile, with fears growing that the confrontation could widen across the region. The regional landscape is increasingly layered and fluid.
For Israel, Iran's nuclear development is considered an existentialist threat, which directly translates into intense lobbying for a hardline US approach. This, however, creates a complex dynamics where Washington must balance its own strategic interests with the immediate survival needs of its key ally, Israel.
Earlier, in June 2025, Israel launched major airstrikes on Iranian nuclear and missile facilities, citing concerns over Tehran nearing weapons-grade capability. The United States joined with limited strikes on key enrichment sites, including Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, describing the action as a preventive measure. Iran condemned the attacks, retaliated, and a brief but intense confrontation followed before a negotiated ceasefire. The latest US-Iran nuclear talks had concluded without a final agreement. Despite official statements describing the discussions as among the most serious in recent years, fundamental gaps remain, most notably over Iran's right to enrich uranium on its soil, the future of its existing stockpiles, and demands for extensive guarantees against weapons development. The February 28th and the following attacks overturned whatever little progress was deemed to have been achieved. Why does US-Iran tension matter globally? Nearly 20% of global oil trade passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran holds the world's second largest natural gas reserves and major oil reserves. US has extensive military presence across Gulf bases. Any tension here causes immediate impact on inflation, shipping insurance, and energy prices. It also has implications for the global nuclear non-proliferation regime. Oil prices react within minutes to escalation. Shipping routes are recalculated. Insurance premiums spike. Nuclear diplomacy trembles. Regional flashpoints intensify. To understand the present, we must first return to the past. In 1953, Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh was overthrown in a coup backed by American and British intelligence agencies. The operation, known as Operation Ajax, followed Mossadegh's decision to nationalize Iran's oil industry, previously controlled by the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. For Washington, this was an act of Cold War containment. There were fears that instability in Iran might create space for Soviet influence. For many Iranians, however, it became the original wound, evidence that foreign powers would intervene to safeguard strategic and economic interests. The Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, was restored and ruled with growing authoritarianism. His regime received sustained American political, military, and intelligence support. Iran became a key pillar to US strategy in the Persian Gulf. But inside Iran, resentment simmered over political repression, widening inequality, and visible Western influence. That resentment would eventually erupt. In 1979, the Islamic Revolution swept away the monarchy. The exiled cleric Ayatollah Ali Khamenei returned to Iran and established an Islamic republic grounded in the doctrine of Velayat-e-Faqih, rule by the supreme jurist. The revolution fundamentally transformed Iran's internal structure and global posture. The United States, once a close ally, became the Great Satan in official rhetoric. Later that year, Iranian students seized the US embassy in Tehran. 52 American diplomats were held hostage for 444 days from November 1979 to January 1981. The hostage crisis dominated American television screens and contributed significantly to President Jimmy Carter's electoral defeat in 1980. Diplomatic ties were severe. Sanctions began. Mistrust hardened into institutional policy. From that moment onward, reconciliation became not merely difficult but politically risky on both sides.
The revolution replaced a pro-Western monarchy in Iran with an Islamic republic governed by the supreme leader. A core ideological pillar became the rejection of westernization and secularism. The United States was now labeled the Great Satan and was seen as the puppet master of the former Shah.
Soon after the revolution, Iraq invaded Iran in 1980 under Saddam Hussein. The Iran-Iraq war lasted 8 devastating years. Casualties are estimated in the hundreds of thousands, with some assessments placing the toll far higher. Chemical weapons were used, particularly against Iranian troops and Kurdish civilians in Halabja. The international response was limited. During the war, Iran felt strategically isolated. Several Western and regional powers provided varying degrees of support to Iraq. The trauma of this war reshaped Iran's strategic doctrine, with emphasis on asymmetric warfare, development of ballistic missile capability, building alliances with non-state armed groups, deep skepticism toward international security guarantees. Iran concluded that self-reliance, military, technological and strategic, was essential for survival. That lesson continues to shape Tehran's policies. Is the US-Iran confrontation ideological or strategic? Is it about revolutionary Islam versus Western liberal democracy? Or is it about influence, deterrence and regional balance? From one perspective, the clash appears ideological. From another, it reflects classic geopolitics, a regional power resisting foreign military presence near its borders. Iran sees American naval fleets in the Gulf, US military bases in Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE and Kuwait, close US security ties with Israel and Gulf monarchies. Washington sees Iran's support for Hezbollah in Lebanon, influence over militias in Iraq, support for the Syrian government, alleged backing of Houthi forces in Yemen. Ideology amplifies rhetoric. Strategy shapes policy decisions.
It is the isolation. The ideological part is that post the revolution, Iran, believed in exporting the revolution. And I think that became the ideological part of which was unacceptable to the United States of America to protect its allies.
Before his death, at the center of Iran's political system stood Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was in office since 1989. Under his leadership, Iran combined negotiation with deterrence, diplomacy alongside missile development, engagement alongside regional leverage. In due course, the US-Iran rivalry became structural, embedded in institutions and national narratives. No issue has intensified tensions more than Iran's nuclear program. Iran is a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and insists its nuclear activities are for peaceful purposes. Western governments remain skeptical. Concerns focus on uranium enrichment levels, advanced centrifuge development, past concealment of facilities such as Natanz and Fordo. The dispute culminated in 2015 with the signing of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action under US President Barack Obama. Under the agreement, Iran agreed to reduce installed centrifuges by roughly 2/3, cap enrichment at 3.67%, reduce uranium stockpiles significantly, allow intrusive inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency. In exchange, sanctions were lifted in phases. For a brief period, diplomacy appeared to triumph. European nations welcomed the deal. Iran's oil exports rebounded and global markets stabilized. However, in 2018, under President Donald Trump, the United States withdrew from the agreement and launched a maximum pressure campaign, reimposing sweeping sanctions. Washington argued that the deal did not address ballistic missile development, regional proxy activity, sunset clauses in the agreement. Iran gradually reduced compliance. Enrichment levels increased well beyond 3.67%, with reports indicating enrichment beyond 60% purity, far closer to weapons-grade levels than before. The consequences were global. Oil markets fluctuated. Diplomatic trust eroded. The durability of long-term agreements came into question. The nuclear issue is no longer solely about atomic capability. It has become a test of whether international agreements can survive leadership transitions.
The fundamental trust necessary for a robust, lasting deal has been replaced by a mistrust that requires intense mediation.
Sanctions have been a central tool of American policy toward Iran. They have targeted banking and financial institutions, oil exports, shipping and insurance sectors, access to the SWIFT financial systems. At peak pressure, Iran's oil exports fell sharply from over 2 million barrels per day to well below 1 million. Government revenues declined significantly. Inflation surged above 40% in certain years. The Iranian rial experienced steep depreciation, eroding household savings and purchasing power. Supporters argue sanctions exert pressure without resorting to war. Critics argue they disproportionately affect ordinary citizens, raising food prices, restricting access to medicines, and limiting employment opportunities.
If the sanctions are imposed on a nation or the arms embargo is imposed on the nation, they try to be more dependent on their own ways. They do create certain weaknesses and hurdles and problems for the state. But of course, it creates a situation for them. It's a question of survival for a nation. And Iran is not like other countries, It's a nation which has, a civilizational roots. And also the Shia, the factor, which is very much part and parcel, which is driving, the policies of Iran today.
Meanwhile, countries such as China and Russia have maintained varying degrees of engagement with Iran, reflecting shifting global alignments and emergence of multipolarity. Beyond the nuclear issue lies a deeper contest: influence in the Middle East. Iran exerts influence in Iraq through political alliances and militia networks, particularly after the 2003 US invasion reshaped Iraq's political order. In Lebanon, it supports Hezbollah, widely regarded as one of the most powerful non-state armed groups in the region. In Syria, Iran backed President Bashar al-Assad during years of civil war, deploying advisors and mobilizing allied militias. In Yemen, Tehran is accused by Washington and Gulf states of supporting Houthi forces in a conflict that has generated severe humanitarian consequences. To Tehran, these alliances create strategic depth, pushing potential conflict zones away from its borders. To its rivals, they represent destabilizing expansion. Israel perceives Iran's missile capabilities and regional posture as major security threats. When violence flares in Gaza, southern Lebanon, Syria, or the Red Sea, US-Iran tensions often intensify indirectly. The rivalry rarely unfolds in isolation. It intersects with nearly every major Middle Eastern flashpoint. Approximately one-fifth of global oil consumption, between 17 to 20 million barrels per day, passes through the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow maritime corridor between Iran and Oman. At its narrowest point, the strait is roughly 33 kilometers wide. It remains one of the most strategically sensitive waterways in the world. Even temporary disruption can cause immediate spikes in global oil prices. Energy importing nations brace for volatility. For Asia, including India, China, Japan and South Korea, heavily dependent on Gulf crude, instability carries immediate consequences. For Europe, navigating energy transitions and broader geopolitical disruptions, volatility in Gulf supply adds further uncertainty. Thus, US-Iran tensions are not regional alone. They have global economic implications. In January 2020, the United States conducted a drone strike near Baghdad airport that killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, commander of the Quds Force. The strike marked one of the most dramatic escalations in decades. Iran responded with missile attacks on US bases in Iraq. While full-scale war did not follow, tensions rose sharply, and the world watched closely. Modern warfare, including drones, cyber capabilities, precision missiles, and AI-enabled surveillance, reduces warning times and increases unpredictability. The margin for miscalculation remains narrow. The confrontation between the United States and Iran is often described in dramatic terms: brinkmanship, red lines, shadow wars. But beneath the headlines lies a more complex reality. This is not merely a dispute between two governments. It is a contest shaped by regional rivalries, global power shifts, economic pressures, domestic politics, and the lived experience of millions. In Iraq, American forces and Iranian-aligned militias operate in uneasy proximity. In Syria, US troops and Iranian-backed elements have found themselves on opposing sides of a fragmented battlefield. In Lebanon, Hezbollah's arsenal remains central to Israeli security calculations. In Yemen, prolonged conflict has caused widespread humanitarian suffering, displacement, and food insecurity. For Iran, these alliances provide deterrence and strategic depth. For the United States and its partners, they represent destabilization. The pattern is one of calibrated escalation. Yet proxy conflict carries danger. Cyber attacks, drone strikes on infrastructure, maritime seizures. The battlefield has expanded beyond traditional front lines.
Proxy warfare in the Gulf region is a highly sustainable, long-term strategy for both Iran and the United States, primarily because it offers a low-cost, high-impact method to project power, maintain deterrence, and avoid direct, ruinous military conflict.
Foreign policy does not exist in isolation from domestic politics. In Iran, the political system blends elected institutions with clerical oversight. Economic pressures, including sanctions-driven inflation, periodically generate debate. A significant portion of the population is young and digitally connected. Some advocate engagement with the international community. Others argue resistance protects sovereignty and dignity. Historical memory of foreign intervention remains a powerful factor in shaping national sentiment.
I don't think the country like Iran with theocratic democracy that they call it, they will never ever budge. But they want to negotiate from the position of strength, even though they're not sitting on the position of strength.
In the United States, Iran policy has altered between engagement and pressure. Under Barack Obama, diplomacy produced the nuclear agreement. Under Donald Trump, maximum pressure has redefined the approach. Electoral cycles influence tone and tactics. This fluctuation creates uncertainty for allies and negotiating partners. It raises a difficult question. Can durable diplomatic frameworks survive domestic political transitions? The global system itself is evolving. China has expanded economic ties across the Middle East, including long-term energy agreements. Russia has coordinated strategically with Iran and Syria. European nations continue to advocate diplomatic engagement. Emerging powers across Asia, Africa and Latin America increasingly question unilateral sanctions frameworks and advocate a more multipolar order. The US-Iran rivalry now sits within broader global competition. In the aftermath of the latest escalation between Iran, Israel and the United States, global attention is now shifting beyond the immediate battlefield. The world is watching closely to see how major powers like Russia and China position themselves in response to the unfolding crisis. European nations, too, will be under scrutiny, whether they push for restraint and diplomacy or recalibrate their strategic alignments in a rapidly polarizing geopolitical landscape. The long and troubled history between the US and Iran has entered another dangerous chapter, with Israel now directly engaged alongside the United States and Iran facing an uncertain leadership transition after the death of Ali Khamenei. The stakes are higher than ever. For decades, despite deep hostility, a full-scale war was avoided. That restraint now appears increasingly fragile. Energy security, regional stability, and the global economic balance are all at risk. The real test in the coming days will be whether diplomacy and statesmanship can still prevail over escalation. That is all we have in this program. Thank you for watching Sansad TV.
संसद टीवी के और भी प्रोग्राम्स देखने के लिए सब्सक्राइब करें हमारा यूट्यूब चैनल और हाँ, इन्हें लाइक और शेयर करना ना भूलें।